Hi, I'm Lisa K. Donner, along with Andrew Moran, Sarah Cowgill, Jeff Charles, and Graham Noble. And this is the Conservative Five, Liberty Nation's online TV news program. It's been 2 years since Black Lives Matter dominated the airwaves. It was a campaign that coaxed and inspired the kind of civil unrest that the nation hadn't really witnessed in decades. It seemed if you weren't Black or minority, well, you were automatically a racist, whether you knew it or not. But here we are now, and people want to know what impact, if any, BLM had on the average Black American. Good question. Liberty Nation's Jeff Charles did a deep dive into the aftermath of the BLM movement. What, pray tell, did you find, Jeffrey?
Black Lives Matter is the grip that keeps on grifting. And the only Black people that have benefited were the Black people that work for the organization. And I'm speaking specifically about the global organization. But really, when you take a look at it, like you said, it's been 2 years. In Minneapolis, that rioting was the worst riot next to the LA riots. And by the way, it took LA decades to recover from that. Yeah. It's going to take Minneapolis and all of the other cities that had serious rioting, it's going to take them decades to recover from that. Over $500,000 in damage in Minneapolis alone. And who does that affect the most? It affects Black people the most, especially Black businesses. 1,500 Black businesses in Minneapolis were devastated. Many of those had to shut down completely. Lives were destroyed. And I'm not even talking about the people who were killed. So that's one impact that Black Lives Matter had. But we also talk about the defund the police movement, where they pressured cities all across the nation to slash their police budgets. And in many cases, that resulted in fewer police officers patrolling the streets, which, according to a Gallup poll, 81% of Black people didn't want that, never wanted that. But these people don't care what Black people want. I don't even think they even talk to regular black people like that. So you have all this damage done. You got skyrocketing crime rates because of fewer police. Who are most of the victims? You guessed it, Black people.
Black people.
So
right.
Black Lives Matter has been a net negative for the Black community. And I really hope that these investigations and reports end up putting them out of business, because they haven't done anything good. And in my estimation, the Black Lives Matter global organization is nothing more than white progressives in political blackface. And that's what this shows. They've done nothing, very little positive for the Black community. Maybe some of the local chapters have done some positive stuff, but the global organization, no, it's been a net negative. And honestly, Black lives have been destroyed and killed because of this organization.
Well, apparently the head of Black Lives Matter said that this 90 million, in her words, white guilt money, it was mistakenly used improperly. Now, there's a difference between a mistake and greed. You know, when you spend $1 million personally or $6 million on a home for your family, that's not a mistake. That's just greed. You know, and I'm wondering if the people, I don't know, maybe it was all white guilt money. Maybe it was.
It was.
Okay.
Most of the money they got were from well-meaning white progressives who saw what happened to George Floyd, and they thought that by giving to this organization, they were going to help Black people. So white guilt actually runs pretty deep. I mean, people say it as a joke, but Shelby still wrote about this. It is a real thing, and the left has excelled at capitalizing on it and using it to manipulate well-meaning folks.
So, Graham, how do you feel about all this white guilt money being used inappropriately, I think is safe to say?
Well, I think it's an incredible achievement on the part of organizations like Black Lives Matter and and other people, going back before the days of Black Lives Matter, going back to people like Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, all of these people who have managed to very effectively convince a lot of white, and again, white progressives. We're not talking about white conservatives, because conservatives have an entirely different outlook on race relations. They're much more interested in, let's not focus on race, let's focus on character and values. But left wingers can't do that. And it's incredible how decades of pounding into the heads of white progressives how guilty they should feel about being white is paid off. Literally has paid off. It's paid enormous dividends. But I read the other day an interesting little factoid, which of course may or may not be true because I read it on social media. So who knows if it's actually true? Jeff may know this better than me. That in fact, Black Lives Matter. I guess Patrice Cullors' family got about 4 times more money from Black Lives Matter than the Trayvon Martin Foundation, which I found, kind of staggeringly poignant because the Trayvon Martin shooting was what started Black Lives Matter.
I'm wondering if all of this emphasis on the color of someone's skin has not really created a worse environment in this country. And I specifically point to the what happened in Buffalo, New York this week with the gunning down of all those Black people by that fellow who apparently has a manifesto of white racist comments, whatever. He's 18 years old. So he was, 16 when the George Floyd thing happened? Mm-hmm. And he was, and I always thought Barack Obama's take on race was kind of troubling. Mm-hmm. It wasn't very healing, in my opinion. And if you go back to those years, this kid was maybe, 12, 10, 8. His whole life, race has been like a major issue. And, he said he was radicalized online, but I'm just wondering if we're creating a culture of racism in this country that is making the situation worse. Sarah?
I think 100% we have done nothing but that since the Obama administration. One of, as a former speechwriter, I really pay attention to the words, and I can somewhat repeat while they're still saying their speeches because I know what they're going to say. What I noticed about the Obama administration, he would go and make a speech to whatever group, whether it was Hispanics, whether it was Black people, whether it was Asian, Native American. He would insert that specific race into the same speech and say, we're not taking it anymore. We just can't take this anymore. And he really banged the drum and got every person of color in every different spice of life, in every vocation. And, whether or not, whatever color you were, if you weren't pasty white, you're the enemy. And he banged that into everybody's head for 8 years. So there's a lot of kids that grew up not knowing what it was like before the Obama administration, when things were a lot calmer when it came to race relations. And now they've just been even more divisive than ever. Yeah, it's not going to get better.
Did they remember that Martin Luther King said we want to judge people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin? It seems like everything's been turned upside down.
Yeah, they don't care. That's not part of their... they'll claim Martin Luther King as, the greatest advocate and the guy who created change in civil rights, and they will be correct. But they also don't tell you that Martin Luther King was conservative and that he did not believe in violent protesting. That would have been a Malcolm X kind of strategy.
Right.
King was more along the lines as like, let's just show that we have, peace through strength. And that's what he did. And that's been thrown out the window. The baby and the bathwater all went out the window.
I think it's fair to go ahead. Go ahead, Graham.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, I'm going to try to inject a bit of optimism into this, because here's the thing, even though I don't take issue with anything anyone on the panel has said, I live in South Mississippi now, and I like it here, and I am surrounded by Black people. And, I do like to go to my local bar and have a beer now and again, as some of you know. And my local bar actually is a pretty kind of, I guess, what you might call a real, typical deep South redneck bar. There's a big Gadsden flag on the wall, and there are plenty of Black people who go in there and drink, and we all get along fine. And one thing I have to say is that we should always remember, we should always keep in perspective that the radicals behind organizations like BLM are still a minority. And I believe that the majority of Black people in this country do not give a fig about Black Lives Matter. They do not feel that they're oppressed. They do not hate white people. And I believe that actually the further to the extreme that organizations that, like BLM go, the more and more Black people will turn their backs on them. And so, like, I don't believe that we're heading for any kind of, like, you know, race war Armageddon type situation.
Well, you know, as I've often said, one of the most racist places I've ever lived was in Boston, Massachusetts. That's not to say it's still that way, but it wasn't in Charlotte, North Carolina, where everybody kind of pretty much got along.
You know, the funny thing is, if you look at it, where the incidences and the violence is taking place, it's in urban environments. You know, we're not the whitest world here in the Midwest. You know, we have Hispanics and Black people and Asians, and you know, that's something we all, I don't know, we turn a blind eye to. You know, we, like Graham says, you know, you sit down and you drink with whoever comes in to drink with you. And I don't see racism here where everybody would assume it would be. I see it in cities. I see it in the big cities where there's an ability to agitate two groups of people and put that on the news. That, I mean, and right, I might be dead wrong, but that's just my observation.
Because there's race baiters out there. And I don't think, and that's the problem with BLM. You know, I wonder if they're just really a bunch of race baiters.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that the Black Lives Matter, at least the leadership, they are not reflective of the regular Black person. The regular Black person is what Graham Noble just described. I mean, you know, you don't see most Black people talking about, oh, we have to get rid of the father or whatever, or we have to get into this Marxism stuff and push for the alphabet agenda. No, the only part that represents them is the phrase Black Lives Matter, because they don't like seeing police brutality and they want police reform, not defunding the police, but police reform. So no, they don't really represent most of us at all, even though we all have our disagreements in our community. Those people do not represent the majority of Black folks. They just don't.
Andrew, I'll give you the final word.
Well, I'll just say that the last couple of years proves why I'm small case BLM, not capital BLM, because the Black Lives movement, the original movement had good intentions, and then it metastasized into the Black Lives Matter organization, and grifters are going to grift. They extracted all this money. And okay, I don't have enough time here because I didn't participate much, but two things. MLK, he had his good points, bad points. He was not a conservative. He believed in basic income guarantees. He was a socialist. Malcolm X, he knew about the white guilt. He knew about white progressives, the dangers they pose. Second of all, but when it comes to race obsession, it's happening right now in the schools. You have kids who are divided into different groups. You have slaves and slave owners. You have white kids who are told about having white guilt. You know, you have Black Lives. If you go on Libs of TikTok account, you always see these transgender teachers have Black Lives Matter posters in the background. So this whole race obsession is only going to fester as time goes by, and before you know it, you know, white people are just going to, you know, hovel and say I'm sorry every time they wake up. So
an honest look at the organization tells the tale. Unfortunately, BLM became more of a victimizer than a benefactor of the Black community. Thanks, panel. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform, YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble. We're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation has its own Roku channel where you can see all of our TV productions. Thanks for tuning in. And remember, surf on over to libertynation.com. Join us in the member zone, just $17.76 for the year. Special thanks to our fantastic editor and post coordinator, Frank DiOrio, and our executive producer, Sarah Cowgill. I'm Lisa K. Donner, editor-in-chief. Thanks for joining us today. This has been a production of libertynation.com, where truth is making a comeback.